Some people will say that Jesus is just made up altogether. There are some who go so far as to say that there is no Jesus, complete fiction, that the Bible is total historical fiction and not to be believed at all. Of course, the problem with that is virtually no historian ever has given any credit to that. We actually have more information, both from the Bible and other sources, about the person of Jesus than we do many other historical figures that no one doubts. So that's really not on the table to just outright reject that Jesus existed. But some people say, okay, well, there was really a man who taught some, there was a rabbi at the time, but then the idea of who Jesus is evolved, and a legend was formed around the actual man, is what people will claim. And one thing that is sadly rather popular is this idea of Jesus being a copycat Messiah. That Christianity, as the followers of Jesus, wanted to form this religion, that they borrowed ideas from other religions and built up this legend of Jesus. And so some of the things that people will say, especially the more what folks might consider fantastical parts of Jesus' life, virgin birth, crucifixion, resurrection, working of miracles, that those things were borrowed from other ideas of pagan religions and made up and inserted onto this person of Jesus. So let's just look at a few of these, just to show how kind of detached from reality this idea is. One of the most popular claims is this cult called Mithras, the god Mithras, and the cult that worshipped him. They say that Mithras was born of a virgin, that he had 12 people that he taught, that he was crucified and resurrected, and that Christians borrowed this from Mithras religions. Well, here's the actual, if you dig into what Mithras religions believed, he wasn't born of a virgin. He emerged fully grown out of a rock. Well, I guess the rock was probably a virgin. Mithras did not die. You look into the legends of Mithras, he didn't even die. He is believed to be taken to paradise on a chariot while still alive, no crucifixion. Well, if there's no crucifixion or no death, how do you raise again? You don't. You have to die in order to resurrect. And Christians did not even encounter this pagan religion for several centuries after Jesus, by the time that these legends about Jesus would have already been established. So if anybody's copying anything, it looks like it'd be more likely that the Mithras believers are copying the Christians. So that one doesn't hold up. Some people point at the Greek god Dionysus. They say, born of a virgin, resurrected. Well, the only problem is the story of Dionysus is not being born of a virgin. It's being born of a human woman that Zeus would have literally mated with. There was no virginity going on there. That was the regular way that people make babies. Also, there was no death and resurrection. People point to that because if you know Greek mythology, Zeus's wife Hera would have gotten mad at his cheating on her and caused the mother of the child to die, but Zeus rescued the child, who then was safe within him and then was restored to life. And they say that's the resurrection. That's got nothing to do with the resurrection. Not even on the same level as resurrection. It has nothing to do with the resurrection. Osiris is another one. However, there's no birth story recorded in any mythology of Osiris. None. Virgin or otherwise. No birth story. He wasn't crucified, according to their mythology. He was eventually killed by his own brother. Some say that the other god, I believe these are Egyptians, Egyptian goddess Isis actually kind of reassembled and brought him back to life. Of course, that has nothing to do with Jesus, because Jesus was crucified and, being God himself, rose himself from the dead. Not the same thing. One of the most popular, though, is Horus. People say that Horus was born of a virgin. However, once again, no, Horus came about according to their mythology the same way most babies do. There's no evidence that Horus was crucified, plus mythology around Horus predates Roman crucifixion by about 1,000 years. So the idea that he would have been crucified, you might as well say he died in a motorcycle accident, for about as much sense as that makes. No matchup at all. Some stories say that he merged with Ra, the sun god, and therefore every morning at the rising of the sun, it is a rebirth. Well, that's not a resurrection. It's a whole different kind of thing. And so you have all these stories where people take these ideas from other mythologies and either flat make stuff up or twist it so horribly to try to shoehorn. Do you might actually use shoehorns anymore? Just wondering. Actually try to shoehorn the idea into Christianity to make some kind of comparison. And it just doesn't match up. And these are just maybe the most popular examples. They get increasingly worse as the other things people try to invent. But here's the fun thing. Let's say they were right. Let's say that there are these other pagan stories from other religions and mythologies that match up with the events of the life of Christ. Does that mean that the disciples borrowed and made it up? Just because you see something that is a fiction and something that is true, does that mean that the true thing must be wrong too? What if I were to ask you I'm going to ask you the name of a boat. Okay? I'm going to describe a ship to you, and I want you to tell me the name. Okay? At the time, this craft was hailed as the largest craft afloat and the greatest work of men. It was described as being unsinkable. It had a triple screw propeller. On board was a shortage of lifeboats. On its maiden voyage, it struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic at nighttime during April. What would the name of this boat be? No. What I just described to you is the plot from a book called The Wreck of the Titan, written in 1898, 14 years before the Titanic. So just because there's some similarities doesn't mean something's not true. So even if someone could point to some other religion and say, oh, look, see, Christianity just borrowed these things from that religion. Just because there's some similarities doesn't mean Christianity's false. Doesn't mean it's made up. It'd be like saying, hey, there's a novel from 1898 that talks about a sinking ship, therefore the Titanic never sank. No, we know the Titanic sank. We got historical documentation. And we know Christianity's true. We have historical documentation. So even if there were similarities, it doesn't do anything to disprove Christianity.